Close your eyes, and I want you to imagine Cleopatra. Now, what I picture is a beautiful woman with long, beautiful hair and black rimmed eyes and fancy clothes and gold jewelry. You can go ahead and open your eyes. We all know Cleopatra for her glamour and her pageantry, but there is more to her than her famed good looks. History has been written by men for men, so Cleopatra has been lost to us as no more than a temptress. Using the Forsyth Library, I have done lots of research and I have found that she did a lot of amazing things that most people probably don't know about. So today, I'm going to share with you about Cleopatra, the years that she spent preparing to lead. I'm going to talk about her, how she had to strategize to keep her throne, and then finally the end. Now, what you may not know, I would first like to share, is that she actually wasn't that beautiful of a woman. We know this from coins that she had made during her reign. She had a really long nose and a very weak chin, so she was really just an average looking woman. What was actually beautiful about Cleopatra was her mind, and there are several firsthand documents from Cicerone, actually one of her enemies, stating that no one could compare to the wit of Cleopatra. Little is known or recorded about Cleopatra's childhood, but what we do know, like I mentioned, is that she was highly educated. According to the Encyclopedia of Ancient Egypt, Cleopatra was thoroughly educated by Greek scholars in alchemy, arts, geography, military science, languages, and physics. And this was really unusual for a woman during her time period, even though she was a queen. She actually wrote a book on pharmacology and medicine, which she presented her own ideas for cures for various diseases of the time. Cleopatra, as I mentioned, learned 12 languages, and one of those was Egyptian. Now, you might be thinking, well, she was Egyptian, so of course she knows Egyptian. Cleopatra and her family, they were the Ptolemies. They've been ruling Egypt for 300 years, and they actually were not Egyptian, they were Greeks. And not one of the rulers before her had taken the time to learn the language or anything about the people that they ruled. So she was really focused on Egyptianizing herself. In fact, one of her first acts as queen was to find an Egyptian celebration and to participate in it, and this kind of cemented the love of the people for her. So even though she had the love of her people, she had to fight to keep control of her throne. So the Egyptian tradition is that if you're a woman, you have to have a man on the throne with you. So when her father died, she had to rule with her 12-year-old brother, Ptolemy the 13th. Now, Cleopatra did a lot of great things for Egypt. She bettered their economy. She was fighting for independence from Rome. But the men at court, because her brother was only 12, the advisors at court, they really wanted to shift the power more to him because they could not handle that she was a strong, educated woman who had a lot of big ideas, and she made a lot of decisions without their permission. According to Professor Dwayne Roller, they had to end there started this civil war between the two siblings. Cleopatra was forced out of Egypt at some point, and Rome kind of saw this. They're like, okay, we can't have one of our countries that we kind of have a claim to fighting like this. So they sent a mediator. They sent Julius Caesar to mediate. They sent him to Alexandria. Cleopatra was not allowed in Alexandria, so she had to think of a way to get help to regain her throne. And so what she did was she was wrapped in a rug, and someone snuck her into his room, and that's how she was able to meet with Caesar. And he, of course, provided her with an army, and her brother was knocked off the throne. At this point, he dies somewhere in the escape from Alexandria. So while she aligned herself with Caesar, she that showed a very diplomatic and political minded ruler. At the same time, she could be cutthroat. I do want to throw that in there because at this point, again, she had to still have a male escort. So she was married to her other brother, who was 10 years old, Ptolemy the 14th. She then had him murdered. Several sources, including Dwayne Roller and John Whitehorn, both professors in archaeology at different universities, they have mentioned that she probably had him murdered. This left her co-regent to her son, If you remember the whole rug in the room episode, this is the son that came about from that. So essentially, she had more power than ever. After Cleopatra regained her throne and firmly grasped this power with her two hands, she fought to make Egypt an empire for her and her future children. So at this time, as I mentioned, Egypt was under control of Rome, and many of Cleopatra's goals for Egypt were perceived as a direct threat to Rome. So at some point, Caesar's assassinated and she remarries to Mark Antony. And the first strike against the two of them is they had a traditional Egyptian wedding. Mark Antony's friends viewed this as a direct attack on the culture and values of Rome. They also took it too far they drew up a document that said Cleopatra's children were going to get parts of Roman land. Octavius, a Roman guy, decided to declare war on the two because this was just too far. So Mark Antony realized they were going to lose, so he commits suicide. Cleopatra hears of this. She also commits suicide. So according to John Whitehorn's book, Cleopatra's, the Romans essentially then murdered her entire lineage. They murdered all of her children, and they went around Egypt destroying all of the temples and things that she had built, and anything that had her likeness they tried to get rid of. So that's why we have very little actual first-hand documents of Cleopatra. At this point, they start to spread propaganda of Cleopatra as this seductress who tempted these good Roman men to their downfall. So the Romans essentially erased her and kind of rewrote her history. Cleopatra was known to be a seductress, but she was actually an intelligent, politically minded ruler. She was well educated, strategical, and strived to make Egypt an empire. Cleopatra did have many victories, and obviously ultimately she lost, but no one can say that she didn't live her life to the fullest and without apology.
Hi, I'm Crystal.
I'm Adriana.
Hi, Liliana.
Hi, I'm Alicia.
I'm Leah.